It looks pretty, you can rip them out now.
I know, right? And I have a little string thing.
But when you rip it out, does the opposite page fall out too? It's like,
It's weird, it's like, yeah, I don't know, I haven't tried.
All right, we're on YouTube, we're live, we're recording.
oh my gosh, I don't have my agenda up yet.
I can't get on it.
I don't know what's happening with an agenda. You don't have a hard copy, do you?
No.
Stand by. I got distracted with other minute discussions before.
Hey, can we get a sound check online? Can someone online? Steve, Andy, can you guys hear us?
Yep, we're good. Thank you. Yep.
We're pulling up the agenda right here.
It is 2:03 on October 18th. We'll call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the CJCC. Those present online, we have Stephen Stocks, Steve Hunter, Andy Faulkner, Lex Bell. I didn't online, and then in the room we have Ms. Hoffine and I forget your name, I'm sorry. Eddie Cervantes.
Yes.
Sheriff Wiggins. What's your official title, Dan?
Justice Court Judge.
Justice Court Judge. I forgot your last name too. So this is why I wanted the minutes, because
This is a test.
and I know I'm failing horribly. Shad Hackwell.
Sam.
Shad. I go to.
All right, I need the last chance to get this right.
Last Rogers,
Good job.
Quinn, and myself, Evan Clapper. Oh, I apologize, everyone. I am running around in 8 different directions. First up is citizens to be heard. Seeing none, we'll move on to presentations. We don't have any presentations. We have approval of minutes. We have minutes from September 27th. Discussion on the minutes. Anyone? Go for it. Yeah.
We need to. We need to send a resolution to the commission that accepts the advisory board bylaw or the bylaws of this board.
So the bylaws that we reviewed at our last meeting and all said this is great, need to be accepted by the legislative body to make it official. So before we can actually act under those bylaws, another step that we got to go through, but we can still meet and move the plan forward without official status.
We'll just need to add those to the next, add that as an action item on the next minute.
Great. Any other discussion on the minutes? Anyone move to approve?
Yes, that moves to approve the minute.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Oh, yeah, I think you guys only get one vote. So.
We'll vote consistently, I know.
That's right.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously by those present. You got that?
Chrissy's taking minutes.
Oh,
Yeah.
how'd you wiggle that one out?
She wiggled it away from her.
Wow, congratulations. But you're still our secretary. Yeah, until December 3rd. Okay, sorry, I'm muddying the waters again.
Until the bylaws are technically approved.
We have no reports. I think our new business will move into the discussion of the draft. So, and any old business, moving on to discussion items, draft of the strategic plan. I like it. I think. Would you like to introduce the drafter of the
Sure.
draft?
So in trying to figure out, based on the discussions that were had during this, I only watched the one meeting, the last meeting, based off the discussion and then, referencing what's actually in the statute, I decided to create the strategic plan, because it seemed like the easiest way, the most efficient way. Some of the things that were never discussed, but I did add, were how to specifically related to data sharing, so that last box is specifically related to that. I think that's the main purpose for that, is that if we're going to ask legislation for something, typically the money that is granted, we need a baseline so that we can show how that money is, improving versus how many people are being served, which is something that causes issues. If, let's say, our plans start to work and then not as many people are using them, we won't get as much money, but if we show that we need the money from the beginning, that's something that I expect to incorporate. If someone has a different idea and doesn't think that's good, let me know and I can go ahead and change that. Some of the other things I incorporated, Judge T's housing, situation, and the way I tried this transitional dependence with housing, working with P and Z, maybe Hasu and Nicole. I don't know how that wasn't discussed, but it was just something that I felt kind of was a natural progression of the conversation. I just didn't know. It seemed like the most appropriate way to handle that, but if you guys have any other thoughts.
I would say that maybe we don't want to just limit to specialty courts, because the only specialty court we have is drug court. Mental health court's a specialty court, and the domestic violence pilot, which hasn't officially, I mean, it's in a weird situation, but that's also not a specialty court.
So how would you want to, so we have the one for, to support transitional housing of incarcerated individuals, which was brought up, and then the specialty court, what would you, how should I
Is
change that?
there, I suppose it could just be covered under transition for incarcerated individuals. So I suppose having both goals is.
Yeah, so I mean, and this is something that I've known.
What about just transitioning into the community?
Excuse me, I'm meaning what though?
Housing options for defendants transitioning into the community. I think that Judge Torgerson was thinking about like safe houses that are drug-free houses.
Right, and so that's why I have the one for if they're transitioning into specialty court, and then one if they're just being released from jail, so that people who are being released from jail or being incarcerated aren't just being released to houselessness.
Tell me where we are, Chrissy, and I'll give it on the screen.
It would be goal, the transitional housing goal, it's the pink one,
So-
there we go,
So maybe call it drug court instead of specialty court.
okay?
Ronald, what do you think?
I'm
Drug
sorry?
court instead of specialty court?
No, I mean, leaving it open to specialty court or, I don't know.
Well, that's the only specialty court.
Right, now it is.
Do you need to have mental health court here?
We talked about it for years ago, I think.
Yeah, and I did add that as something like, oh, and these are all super long-term goals.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a broader catch-all of like, or later in the system or something.
Right,
Well,
well,
maybe instead of specialty court, we could just say people that are being supervised, that are on probation.
that's a good idea, I like
Yeah.
that.
Because then that, not everybody that's in drug court is necessarily has been to jail. But
So transitioning from probation,
or into probation.
Into probation.
that changing yours too?
No, mine's in the packet.
Maybe it's on to probation, not into.
Do you want to share your screen and then I'll,
I'll pass this.
Yeah, it's on to, not into.
Oh, I don't think you guys will be able to see it change it.
No,
Yeah, so I'm
this
just
is a
updating
PDF we're
my,
looking at.
yeah. Alright,
Yeah, I think with that being a longer term, I think if we just kind of have a placeholder there,
sure,
that we don't have to necessarily nail it this first time.
right.
If there's room to tweak it as we get closer to reality.
Mhm. And then as far as strategies go on that one specifically, can you, well, I mean, so this is I don't know how much anyone in this room knows about like planning and zoning and how we could potentially incentivize that within our land use code. But is that something that you guys are comfortable with leaving, or do you want me to change that in some way?
I think community stakeholders is a nice catch-all,
Okay,
so, I think that's good. I like the strategy box.
on both? Do you want me to
Um,
just completely copy and paste the upper one to the bottom? And how does UAC feeling about this? Are they
Yeah.
interested in what we're doing? Is this appropriate?
The,
Absolutely, yes.
are you talking about the IDC survey?
No, I just wanted to make sure that I'm gonna use their first names because that's what I can see, and I'm not familiar with you, so I'm not trying to be rude, but Steve and Kara.
Abby,
Addie.
Andy.
Andy.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, you guys are so bad with names, all of you. You're so bad.
We've been weakened by years of Zoom when everybody's.
Yeah. Oh, I just want to put it, we also have, it's like Emily Resident. It's an evidence.
I might say under the second one, with the creative incentive programs, you can see, just, so that's a question.
Okay. Well, that was,
Yeah,
I was
I
gonna
think-
think you guys.
yeah.
And then I know, how does everyone feel about including? People who are not necessarily county affiliated, but.
We lean on us a lot for assistance with that stuff. They don't ask that.
My thought would be sense they groups it, so those in they are given certain incentives. That's not the agreement, sort of partnership programs.
Yeah.
Something they might be interested in.
Could be real listening to more solutions. Could be like homelessness.
Yeah, that was my other, she doesn't. Anyway. I didn't know she had these.
Maybe she can- So, is there others outside? Yeah, I mean, like if you're releasing something, if you were sending somebody back up in the. Not necessarily. More, you don't really. Especially Is the develop organization for the
Pardon the interruption. Is anybody else's audio out?
Yes,
Yes,
mine
it's
is.
horrible.
Same here.
It
Okay.
sounds like chipmunks talking.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Okay.
Well, the real reason I was interrupting, if you guys will pardon me for just a moment, Chrissy, can I get you on the phone real quick? I have a semi-urgent question for you. Sorry.
Saw you calling, but I didn't know when to start. 1 second, I'll step out.
Let's see. Questions over how to the business end of it to the middle of the table. Does that have anything to do with it?
Yeah, that's the microphone.
That's my.
That's the microphone and the camera and the speaker. Can you guys hear us better now?
The piece of paper.
Yes.
Yes.
So that was one.
Yeah, that's better.
In regards to like jobs wise, don't some of the hotels offer housing now? They do. So I think they provide employee housing at the hotels. A lot of the hotels do now. And so if you encourage like applying for jobs while they're just before they're getting out. And I know the legislation just mandated workforce services for the state, like DOC, Department of Corrections, they're gonna work with them and they have to provide a list of jobs that people with heavy extensive criminal history can apply for and would be eligible to get. And so they're supposed to be creating a database for that. And I talked to the director of IPP yesterday about that because we contract with the states and we house the state inmates. So my thought is we're gonna have to have that system anyways for the state inmates that we house. Could we use it for our county inmates? And they said, absolutely. And so.
And now that system is a, what'd you say, IPP?
So we contract with IPP,
I don't know.
inmate placement program.
Okay.
So a lot of the county jails house state inmates and that's what that's called.
Should we list them as a responsible or?
So, well, my thought is on the transitional side to create more transitional, because like I said, a lot of the hotels have employee housing. So if we could get them a job essentially prior to release or working on that path, maybe that comes with the housing as well for some of these jobs. So you could probably add that to a plan, as a strategic plan, because they're already creating the list, or they're supposed to be doing this through workforce services. And if we can piggyback off the state and use that system anyways, we might as well incorporate that into the plan.
Love it. Yeah.
That, from my experience, that's one of the biggest things is jobs and housing. If they can't find a job, they don't have no place to live, they're gonna go straight back to the same place they were, and then they're gonna come back to jail. So the idea is to reduce recidivism. That would probably be one of the ways I would start, is jobs and housing.
So should I add a section for jobs
So-
as well for this?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
Cause I mean, cause I think you've got it on there that says for the housing, like community stakeholders, I mean, that would fall under like hotels and stuff like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Right, well, yeah, I'm just thinking, as far as like, if our objective is to get these people, like, from the last meeting, the objective sounded more like we were just trying to get them into housing, like, getting them a job, I think is a great idea. I just wanna,
Well, I
from
mean,
the group, that's
I'm
something
gonna,
that we should.
yeah, and I'm gonna be doing it anyways, regardless, just because I think it's a good idea. And if they're gonna provide the data for me and they can, because the workforce services, they're supposed to be also not just providing jobs, they're supposed to be helping them with resumes, teaching them interview skills and stuff like that to try and get these individuals jobs. So I just figured I'd steal their system. Or borrow it. I mean, I'm housing.
And they're fine with it?
Yeah.
Would they still be considered a defendant, or is that?
So they're still incarcerated, so they would be, so if we said, okay, because I think the prison they have to provide access to the system for the inmates 30 days prior to their release. So we can do the same thing essentially with the county inmates that are sentenced. They're on probation or whatever, and say their sentence was stayed for county time, 90 days or whatever, and then they're going through and just before they get released, if they don't already have a job to go to, we can provide them access to the system and see if we can get them help to try and get a job.
And then do they reach out to work? Sorry, to Department of Workforce or just this IPP?
No, so it wouldn't be through IPP. It'd be essentially on the Workforce Services website.
Perfect. That's
They're
what I'm
gonna
just
bring
trying to
down the
think of.
access, and so what their plan is, because I talked to the director, and he said that. So all the jails have phone companies like we have Securus, and I'm talking about going to a different phone company next year, but either way, they all offer tablets. A lot of these phone companies offer tablets, so what their idea was is to put this workforce service site on the tablet, so that way they can start doing the job searches and all this other stuff. And they would just put it on the system, we wouldn't have to. So,
Great. I will flush this out a little while later. This is probably, so this one is, as far as like on the timeline for this one's going to be started to be implemented immediately, or it already has it?
No, so it was passed in the legislation, it's House Bill 181.
181, perfect, thank you.
So I think they have until July 24. So if this is a strategic plan that we're developing, I mean, I would just include it because it's still in process, but they are required to do it
Okay,
and have it implemented by July of 2024.
okay, great. Okay, to add to that, thank you, Shannon, helpful.
And I do have a comment on your reporting with the CJCC or CCJJ, whatever
Okay.
CJCC's things we're dealing with.
Go ahead.
So the jail is already required to report half the stuff that you have listed on there.
Mhm.
You already seen that.
I pulled up what you were talking about, but the part of what this bill that created this board requires is that we share with it to each other.
Oh, okay.
So my thought was just, I would get quarterly reports from everyone that needs them. It sounds like I've already spoken with Emily Butterfield with the courts, and Melissa. I will get with you about the jail ones, and then our system, I'm able to pull those reports through our Carpel system. And then I'll just start a graph every quarter that will just be standing on the minutes so that we can have a baseline for our own reporting. And then the state, we can give it to the state when they require it every year.
Yeah, I have to report half of the stuff that's on your
Right.
list to the CJCC, CJS, whatever.
Yeah, my question with this, is there anything that you guys see that's missing on the reporting that you think is important to have with
Purposes of this.
well, for the purposes of making sure that we have a good baseline so that the money that we receive going forward wouldn't be based off of the numbers of people served. So the CJC has issues where as the CJC starts to work more efficiently and better, they get less money because it's based off the number of people who are coming in to be interviewed. And the purpose of the CJC is so that people are not abused, right? So that's kind of, it leads to these kind of weird, like the more it's working, the less money you get. So if we have these baselines so that we can base our funding off of how many people we're actually helping, as this money comes in and the line goes down, we can base it off that instead of how many people we're actually serving.
I would have
Does
to.
that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that with like the first goal outlining like a position coordinator, that like that's a good way to kind of be like, here's the duties that need to be done, we need to file these reports and blah, 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 and almost even if that position isn't ultimately filled, we're like, we need this much money to pay somebody to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
That then, even if it ends up in your lap,
Mhm.
it's still,
It's just the pre-trial services.
Yeah, so this is back up to there, but
yeah.
yeah, and I understand, I do think that those numbers would be ultimately tied to that position. But where it stands now, I think we need to start getting these numbers. It's better for us to have all of this data and our baseline already, so that when the state comes to us and says, well, you don't need this money anymore because you're only serving 30 inmates, and it said, it's because we've done all of these things in the past. Look at what our numbers looked like before we got the money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we have, those legs to stand on. when it comes down. So my immediate question, I do want to get back to what you're talking about, but my immediate question is on the bottom, on the, if you scroll up or down, sorry, to the very bottom, the data sharing, if we're missing any areas that you guys can see that would help us have stronger legs with the legislature.
Make that a little bit bigger.
And people online, feel free to unmute and scream.
Just have an average daily report of my populations that we're talking on.
Yeah, so just like an average number, right? I mean, those, and also I came up with these just,
No, that's fine.
I think, I
that's
mean,
one
if
of
you
the
guys have
reports-
better,
No, that's one of the
better
reports I
reports,
have to
that's one.
provide to the CJCC, whatever.
CJCC, yeah. All of them are the same letters. So I mean. I was gonna say Beverly.
Probation violation reports, that would be a court report would be my guess.
Yeah.
Or the county attorney's office, that's, or APNP, I guess.
Yeah, so that would be, you know. I would think that would mostly fall in our lap and the courts,
It would, well,
APMP as well,
it
but I
would be
mean,
APNP and then whoever does your just court probation, whoever tracks that for violations. Because it could be the city attorneys, I guess.
right, yeah. But Judge, do you see any like areas or goals that you could think of? Because I know you're on so many of these kind of boards that your insight is really helpful. I almost called you.
No, not really. I think that, I mean, we're just getting started, so it's a beginning process, right? And that's kind of like where we're at with some of our other strategic plan and mapping systems is, this is where we're starting. This is going to grow and get better and have more added to it once we have a better understanding of where we're at, what we need, what's available.
I think this just give you an idea of what's going on. with
Sure.
recidivism.
Right.
That's your intent.
And you're not seeing holes?
For food for thought, recidivism. We had a really great conversation about this recently with I don't remember one of my meetings. What does recidivism actually mean? Does it mean reoffending if I had a domestic violence and then I went out and got a no insurance ticket? Depends how you count recidivism. So just at some point, if recidivism is something that we're looking at, we may need to define what recidivism is. And I think that's a hard thing to do. And that's one of the goals that we're doing in some of the other
The way I look
things.
at it. The reason why I use recidivism is because corrections world, it says
Yeah.
coming back to jail or going back. to
And that's one of the
jail.
things that we look at when sentencing.
Right. Well, and I also think that like defining success is important anyway, like it's the success of a drug court participant. And it looks different to every drug court participant. So I do think that we need to take, you know, a lot of these numbers and the whole process with a big picture, like don't, you know. But if, I do think actually adding definitions to all of this would be probably really helpful, and I should probably do that. And I should have thought of it.
Acronym.
Well, and what I did do though, separately, and I don't want to jump around too much, but on the map, it seemed like there was some confusion. So like I don't want to call it the map, the flow chart of what our criminal justice system, I did add sort of a outline of what everything in there actually looks like. Because I don't think this is just what, you know, when someone who doesn't know what happens in the criminal justice system, this is just a way for them to see. So community partners can look at this and say, okay, now I can see where things happen in the process. I don't, this piece of everything that I've done, I thought was sort of, I don't want to call it the least important, but it lends itself to all of this other work. And so I think that maybe, the way that I had designed it wasn't that this was the map that we were sending to the state. This was just an informational sort of flow chart that gave people an idea of what someone who goes through the system goes through. Right? And that these, you know, the resources and where they fit into this is important. And I can define that a little bit bigger with you know, maybe like a criminal justice tree or something, so like what pretrial release actually looks like, what dispositional court actually means. But trying to create that on like a flow chart just didn't make sense to me, and I didn't even know how to do it. So sorry about that. As you guys were talking about it, I was sitting there like, oh, I wish I was in this meeting, because I think I could have explained it a little better.
Well, one thing we talked about at the last meeting is diversion doesn't really belong where it is. It's earlier in the process. Because if something's diverted, the county attorney doesn't file it. Right, well,
It depends on the case, though. We have cases sometimes that are filed and then ultimately gone through a diversion program. So it can be done both. Sometimes it's really hard to know before I file if we're going to divert a case, because we need some additional information normally from defendants. Like immigration cases, we'll divert those so that we don't have negative immigration consequences. But I wouldn't know their status until they have an attorney hired or until they reach out.
so sometimes a diversion happens after their initial appearance.
I think it would only happen after initial.
No.
consent.
I can have it before,
There's a
like
version
between a
program.
case.
Oh,
But-
right, but,
Well,
okay, so this, an arrest or booking has already happened in this flow chart.
So
This doesn't include screening,
there's,
so it's, you know, a law enforcement contact arrest.
so I know like Davis County, they're doing something similar to like, I think it's Davis County, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Davis, maybe you've heard, but I know they're doing something similar to a diversion. So if they arrest somebody for like, say, a minor alcohol offense, and they want to get this person held, they can take them to this place or whatever, they stay there and they say, okay, you know, basically, we're not going to file this with the county attorney, and the county attorney's office and the courts or everybody are working with them. They go to this place, and if they go through the program, and they don't leave, the charges never get filed type thing. But if they leave, then they take the charges to the county attorney's office, and then they can file additional warrants. So that's technically a diversion prior to actually.
In those cases, in those cases, they have to have an MOU with the county attorney's office, because law enforcement can't do a diversion prior. Chief Garcia, before he left, was talking about setting up a project similar to the Rio Grande. That's a program that they did up in Salt Lake, and they have the sign off from either the city prosecutor or the county attorney's office to give them that authority to do that diversion agreement, because law enforcement alone can't do that, and it has to go through your prosecution agencies. And I've expressed interest in doing that, but then unfortunately Chief Garcia left. I think Chief Bell is now on. I believe he's on this meeting as well, and that's something that he may have interest in looking at doing, so that we can keep some of the people out of the system that don't need to be there and just need some additional help.
I was gonna suggest that be on like one of your guys' plan,
Okay, what,
if there's actually interest in them.
yeah, no, I like it.
Definitely saves lots and lots of money.
So maybe under, and I'll change that section that says mental health court. I will change that to just a diversion section, so that
I could do diversion 1, diversion 2.
it makes more sense,
Because we don't,
because we don't have a
I
mental
don't
health
even
court.
know if it's.
But I could,
involved here
you know,
anymore,
then we could include mental health court in the objective, and then that makes more sense, and we have the Rio Grande.
so I know the mental health court, so we went through meetings about that, and
Yeah,
we talked about it. There's just not enough people for the program in Moab. I mean, yes, we have people, a lot of people with mental health problems. It's just whether or not they're not committing an offense high enough to qualify for mental health court. There was probably like 3 people that could actually be in it. So Judge Torgerson did kind of his own thing to where he was just having these individuals come and meet with them. They were sentenced to probation, and then they would do check-ins with them like every month or whatever. That actually worked really well. So,
Kind of like an informal.
so I added that, here, not that you guys can see, but I've switched that up, send that back around. But I did, thank you. And then I will add another arrow for diversion. All right. And let's see, where's the last one? Let's go back up to pretrial services. That's okay on this strategic plan. So I think that one's gonna take and I don't know, I think Jameson and Chan can probably talk about this one the most articulately.
You're gonna need another person, a full-time person for it. So the idea, because I listened to the last meeting and it was talked about trying to just throw these services on top of the drug court tracker.
Can't do it.
You wouldn't be able to, we burn out our drug tracker as it is probably every 2 to 3 years. It's because you have to phone 24/7 and you're always getting phone calls. They just don't feel like they ever get a break. So if you throw pre-trial services, that could add up to a lot of people. It would just be burn out your staff. So like
I agree.
Judge Torgerson said that they do it in Carbon with their drug court tracker. They have 2 drug court trackers.
Right.
So it would just make more sense to create 2 drug court trackers and then have them split also the pretrial duties as well. And that way they save on burnout as well from both of them.
Sure, I think that'll take commission buy-in as well. Cause it's a new position for your office. I don't even know if that's the.
State would have to provide some money for that.
We hope, yeah, if you're gonna do this, yeah.
So,
On the second objective within the pretrial services, it has release recommendation report for complete and informed pretrial release decisions on qualifying defendants. What did you have in mind?
so that was based,
Kind of already exists.
well, so that was based off of, something that Chris brought up about, with the creation of these, pretrial services. I don't know if it was Davis County or Salt Lake, but the person that I spoke with, it seems like they send someone who gets a more, they get releases from these people who are in the system, and they're able to see a more complete picture instead of just what is pulled off of the PSA. They're able to see a little bit more. It's not an interview so much, but they're just able to pull some medical records, maybe some mental health records if they sign off on it. And then they're able to just have a bigger picture. This was, it is Salt Lake County.
So essentially just a more in-depth look.
Yeah, it was just something that was brought up, so I threw it on here. I can remove it. It was just because it was mentioned, I thought it was important to put on here. I didn't want to purposefully leave someone's idea off. So that's where it came from, and that was my interpretation of it.
The housing issue obviously is huge. I got an email, and maybe after this meeting or a different meeting, I could get information from you guys about housing. IDC, Indigent Defense Commission, is asking for information on housing and criminal conduct, like how they're interfacing. I don't know. I mean,
Well,
it makes sense to me. You don't have a house, you commit a crime.
That might
But,
actually be a really good,
but that's a little
something to add to the reporting. Is
simplistic.
how many of our offenders come from homelessness houses.
Jameson, would you know? No,
And well,
housing, the folks who don't have housing, if you just, Shan, you just said jobs and housing equal recidivism. If you don't have housing or a job, you're likely to
statistics. would show that,
recidivate.
yeah.
I guess is the
I mean,
word.
we ask them when they come in jail, whether they have a house or.
Well, we ask for an
or whatever. I
address.
mean, you just ask for their address. Most of them, if they don't have a place of residence, or they just don't want to give it to you, they just give you a PO box, and it's usually their general PO box that's over there at the post office. Or they just say I'm homeless.
So in theory, I could get information from you.
Yes, we probably.
I think the statute says that we can ask you.
Like, yeah.
But I actually think that's a really good reporting that we should have on our data. So I've
I
added that.
can do on that, answering that survey.
And
by
I think we
asking
can also look at our cartel on how many people don't have addresses.
Well, a lot of these.
Well, that's
individuals,
gonna be mixed, because sometimes the officers won't get the address.
Right, but I think we'll get it done.
You can get a general idea.
I think-
based
I
off
think
the
I'll like-
booking report, on a booking report, you can get a basic idea.
Right.
But a lot of these individuals, they'll give you an address, doesn't mean they have their own house, they just live with a friend, or they're staying there, or whatever it is, they're couch surfing.
Mhm,
Happens a lot here,
mhm.
so.
But I do think that that's incredibly, that's an important, stat to have.
Thank you. Maybe we can get money from that too.
All right. What's next? Kind of commandeered this meeting, sorry, guys.
No,
Please tell me to be quiet if I'm talking too much.
you're doing a great job.
Okay, so I think I've gone through everything on our strategic plan.
What about the increased treatment options?
That's.
Oh, sorry, yes, I did. skip that one.
Questions down there, you said you were confused.
I was very confused about this portion of the conversation. So my thoughts were, so USU has, different programs locally that encourage certain types of education. So people who live here can absolutely become a nurse very easily. People who live here can become, various things very easily. I don't know how easy it would be for the county to work with USU on creating sort of, maybe counseling program with USU so that people who are inclined could become counselors as easy as they could become a nurse, just by access locally. That was my thought with how we could possibly create.
What about
options
just
for it.
getting even your GED when you're in jail?
So we already offered that.
Yeah, so that's all done
And
through
that's what
Arches,
was
and I
gonna-
think it's
well,
already
that's
there,
what I
right?
was actually gonna suggest is to talk to Trish.
Mhm.
She works closely with USU and she's the head of the Arches Education
Well,
Program.
yeah,
And so she already is affiliated with the jail. And so she offers the high school diplomas, GEDs, and then we also do just some higher education in the facility.
right. So then I didn't even mean it that way, that everyone, I think, when they read it, took it as like getting people who are possibly incarcerated into careers.
You're just talking in general.
Well, no,
Getting
I was
more-
talking about just having people like local, people who live here, we have a huge nurse, like, we don't have a shortage of nurses because there is a program at USU that offers a nursing program. So you can go to USU and become a nurse very easily. So if you could become a counselor as easily, maybe people will be more.
My
interested in
question
doing it.
would be is it? What's the point of the strategic plan? Is it for just like all community wise, or is it just for those that are?
Well, I think creating resources so that people who are coming out of, have no option for treatment. If we are creating a situation where we have an abundance of treatment
I see what you're
options,
saying. I see what you're saying.
then people will be more likely to seek.
Because it
treatment,
creates
because then they're not
resources in the
waiting 4 months to
community.
see Derek Cook.
I see what you're saying.
Can I ask a question real quick? As far as like, lack of therapists in the community, can I get clarification on what is lacking in Moab? So I'm not from Moab, so I'm just curious as to what, the treatment resources that are not available, that you're not seeing in the agency, or sorry, in the county.
We just have very limited resources where there's one treatment provider for domestic violence in the area, and they serve all of Grand County, all of San Juan County. And I think that they've even extended and see people in Carbon now and likely Emory. So that's one treatment provider providing all of our domestic violence.
And you see a
Treatment.
lot of people saying that they can't get in, or it's months out.
Yeah, and it takes them a very long time. The process to get into domestic violence treatment is quite extensive anyways. And then you add in that the provider is a sole provider and very booked up. And we also only have the Four Corners that does our substance abuse and mental health. They're the only, well, I suppose Derek also does substance abuse, I think, at this point. But he's also already busy doing domestic violence. So we basically only have one substance abuse, mental health, and domestic violence provider.
Well, and Derek
Right.
also provides the juvenile court, the juvenile sex offender treatment.
Yeah.
So he's
Pretty busy.
Yeah, we just have very limited resources, and there are online options available. but you know, it's mixed reviews, and sometimes for people getting telehealth in this type of scenario isn't always the best, and it depends on what, you know, provider you see, and time will tell how that works for us, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's an option, and it's all that we have at this point are our only secondary options. So basically, all treatment is stretched as thin as it about can be.
So I mean, obviously I'm the clinical director for Four Corners, and so I know that Four Corners in Moab is not at capacity. So we do have room to treat people, and so I'm just wondering if you want to be more specific in this type of thing as to what specific type of treatment you need more of in your county.
Domestic violence.
Yeah, like specifically writing into this plan, domestic violence might be one thing that you want to focus on, where you have Moab Regional that also does a substance abuse program, and Four Corners Community Behavioral Health does a substance abuse and mental health program. Maybe you want to focus your efforts on domestic violence rather than, because I do know that both of those places have capacity to treat individuals for mental health and substance abuse disorder. So do you guys understand what I'm saying?
We do. I think that, you know, it's the more options you have, the better is always helpful, right? If there's more treatments available that we could access, that would be great for people. Domestic violence is one of the things that is the hardest for people to get into treatment with right now.
I think this was, like, when I wrote this, it was specific to the domestic violence conversation. I obviously didn't write that specifically, but I think my thought was specifically to the domestic violence, and I don't know, does Four Corners offer that, or could they?
No. So that's what I'm saying, is that maybe when we look at that as being a capacity issue, that we look at how we can increase those services in Grand County, for domestic violence. So I'm not sure. I can obviously talk to our CEO and see if that's something that we want to include in our treatment services in Moab. I don't think we're against it. It's hard when you treat the victims to also treat the offenders, the perpetrators, in the same treatment facility. So that's why we've stayed away from it, is because you're getting a lot of the same, you're treating the victims, and the perpetrator comes in for treatment as well. There's a chance that their paths are going to cross, and that's probably not a good idea. And so that's why we've kind of stayed away from it. But I mean, I think that we're willing to look at options if we can, you know, find a place to do that treatment, that one of our therapists could get trained and provide something similar to domestic violence treatment. So, but I think the reason that I bring up the substance abuse and mental health disorders, I get that people want choices as far as their treatment providers go, but I'm advocating that I don't see that being a capacity issue in Grand County as far as what we're seeing. So that's just kind of what I'm seeing on my end.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. When I was going through and creating the community resources, there are, for how small Grand County, well, for how limited our population is, smaller populations,
Right.
We do have a lot of resources. And they're really great resources. And I don't think anyone is downplaying the importance of, you know, drug and alcohol treatment options, but the domestic violence treatment options is a huge problem in Grand County. And I think that it's just continually week after week in court, people are saying, I couldn't get in. If there's a way that we could have, you know, one more provider, two more providers, especially if they're that, we're going to do what we can to do it. I think that's really
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also an area that has very little funding. Domestic violence, Medicaid insurances don't pay for domestic violence treatment. So that's another thing that you'll want to look at when including this into this is is there dollars available for domestic violence treatment?
What did you say? You said something.
I said that when we created this, it was kind of looking at it like an ultimate wish list too. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, and I think with that in mind, you know, kind of spelling out different treatment options, styles that do with, you know, whether it's more substance abuse, more domestic violence, more like, you know, at least listing those in the objectives or the
Sure.
strategy.
So I will make sure that that's a little, that objective is more detailed.
There definitely is a lot of substance abuse.
Right.
Treatment available in Grant County, especially now with the recovery center. Which has been great to work with the jail already partners with them as well, so.
That's news to me that did you say Medicaid or Medicaid doesn't reimburse for the domestic violence treatment? That's news to me, and that would be something that the legislative up north could work on and lobbying there. So it's nice to have it on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to add, I'm gonna have to think about how I fix this. I'm not gonna do it right now, but I will fix this treatment option section.
Chrissy, you're awesome,
Yeah.
by the way.
I think so too. I think more people really need to get on board.
You're more awesome than you're willing, right?
Five-star Yelp. Definitely have to do my own.
Yeah, if you listen to me. All right, where are we at now?
Steve, Andy, have you guys have looked at some of these other plans from other counties, or does this seem like we're working in the right direction? Is there big gaps here that are pearls that you've seen on other ones that we should try to rope into ours?
Well, I think this looks really great. And I was going to chime in too that San Juan County is also looking to address the lack of treatment for domestic violence perpetrators. So you guys are not alone in this. They're looking at how to write that into their strategic plan as well. And also, I would just say that any budget items that you're asking funding for, you might consider putting language in there for consumer price index. So you don't get locked into a number that is no longer covering inflation in 2 years. But I mean, this looks fantastic. You guys have drafted up an amazing report. It looks really good. Thank you, Christine.
Welcome. This is actually just the plan. I thought the report needed to be separate, so I was going to create the report after we finalize the plan, unless I'm being advised of something different.
I think this is what we're looking to have each county turn in, is the strategic plan with your community resource in there.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Turn in what I have.
The comments we talked about, or there's a couple comments about looking at past collaboration with San Juan County, maybe that was a problem, and then also for treatment, warrior spirit, and that brings to mind like treatment, back to the treatment thing, not to hark on that by any means, but side note, like culturally diverse treatment, Spanish speaking treatment options.
I was gonna say, you got the multicultural center on there, but that wounded warrior one, right? That was actually really good.
The which one, what's it called? Warrior spirit.
Warrior, that's what I was-
Okay, and then this is kind of, I don't know if I should even bring this up. I know that Grand County and San Juan County have very different sort of political views and outlooks on how things look. Partnering with them on different things sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. I think that I understand that the goal is to make sure that our community members are getting the services they need. But I just wanted to kind of keep in mind that past collaborations with San Juan are what they are. And so.
Well, I feel like I have a good relationship with County Attorney Brittany Ivins. She and I see on the same page. I'm more than happy to extend the olive branch and work with especially Brittany, Mitch Mon, Mac McDonald, and the other folks down there on, especially on the things that we both have in common. I think they have a problem with some of the things with DV counseling. And then also we have a good chunk of population that is in Spanish Valley that's, you know, technically in San Juan County, but also in Grand. So I think on some of the things, we should definitely reach out and have that strong push for that same request, like, hey, DV treatment should be, you know, provided to rural Utah. And I think that's something we can easily agree on and be on the same page on some of those issues that I don't think are as politically charged as other issues. Just my 2 cents.
I would just say that Sheriff Lacey and I have a really good working relationship too, so we can also team up.
All right, well. Great. All right. I don't think, I think that covers everything that I brought to the table today.
It's great. There was a lot.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I mean, like, we have moved the ball significantly from where we were just a few weeks ago. And we have you to thank for that, so thanks.
When does this have to be turned in?
We're hoping to get it to UAC early November, and they're gonna kind of review everyone's so that at the end of November, we can turn it into the official. I don't know who we address that to, but
We turned it, I have an email address, we send the report to them.
so that early to kind of mid-November is kind of like a soft deadline to obviously the longer they have it, if they've got feedback and we want to tweak some things before final submittal. The more time they have it, the more we can have, but in terms of edits from today's discussion, do we want to try to meet again before submitting that, or can we do that through
I think we can do it through email if everyone's okay with that. I think that I'll incorporate everything that we've discussed. I will send it out the same way I did before. And then I'll assume no news is good news. And then if I receive comments on anything that you think I've misinterpreted or done wrong, then you guys can tell me and then we'll fix it and go back and forth that way. I think it's more efficient. I do think these are important, but I also think we're all busy people.
and we feel good about the pretrial section capturing a lot. I know that was something a lot of people were excited about last time, and I think that should be kind of like top of the list as it is.
Well, okay, so here's what I think I'm hearing. As far as the pretrial services, that's going to require more money from the commission, from the state, for them to get another person.
Yeah,
You would need to provide funding for like ankle monitors.
And that will
stuff
be,
like
I
that,
mean, it's a
because
bigger
courts
deal than I think.
would order GPS tracking or alcohol monitors, stuff
Right.
like that. 'cause
do we want to add some of that objective?
Yeah.
Hardware or whatever we want to call it.
Right.
into
They can
this?
get-
So my
we can
thought was
talk
with
to
the timeline, we could have a
general
presentation
idea.
of what they need coming up in June, so that can go to the commission. And then we can get more, more detailed report on how much money it will actually require. If that date is too far away, we can switch it. If it's too
Oh, for
close.
next year.
For next year, June 24 was when
To get
I
an
thought
idea of the
you
numbers
guys
we
could get your
present.
numbers together by June. We could present that to the commission for getting how much money that would actually cost.
I think June would probably be fine. That's before even the mid-year amendment, so.
Yeah,
So I think you would know.
well, I mean, the idea is that we would be making an ask.
Yeah.
So, hopefully, in terms of amendments, it would all balance out.
I think we could sit down and run the numbers and get a cost of staff, and then I could get a cost of equipment. It really depends, like, cause I can talk to Scranton and get an idea of what the ankle monitors, cause we already do the 24/7 program, so.
Mhm.
But we don't own those ankle monitors, those are state owned, so.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think it's a bigger deal. Like it's not as quick as I think that the last meeting made it seem like it could be. Like, I don't imagine that this could even be in place for a year.
do it.
I bet you could do it.
You could do it. It was just you'd have to get the staff position filled, and then you would have to get the ankle monitors, and then you would have to contract with one of these AMP or Scram
Mhm.
to do the tracking, to send us the reports and stuff like that, because
The only
Right.
reason I say
you
we
would
do
have
it right now,
subscription fees, and you would have all that crap, but
we're in a unique time where we actually have applicants and we have no positions open. So if you're
Right.
gonna do it,
Want to do it now?
Because that could change too. I mean,
Right.
because for years, we've always been shorthanded, so these positions are like great, but how are you gonna fill it?
Right.
So I think now is the time to do it if you're gonna do it.
And this wouldn't necessarily be a post position.
It would have to,
You're
be.
gonna have to.
Yeah, it would have to be at least a corrections officer.
Yeah.
But because if you're traveling around, because you would be arresting or
You'd have to have
you
a
could
gun,
take
yeah.
them into custody, because if they're on probation. And I'm going to their house and I'm doing this stuff, I could violate them for not following what the judge's order. And so in that case, you could do corrections, but you would have to have an LEO show up, so it'd be easier just to do another LEO.
Do you think in the goal and the objectives that there should be a call out of like the additional hardware? Because I think it does a good job of creating that it would require an additional position,
Mhm. I can add that.
but if we're
Hardware
talking,
for sure.
yeah.
I can add all of that.
Hardware,
information.
yeah, all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Does it save any money to the jail?
I mean, in theory, yeah, I mean,
theory.
if you're not housing people in the jail. Because the only people that pay us for housing in the state jail is the state
Is the state.
inmates. Unless they've been sentenced to state prison and then we get COP money, but at the end of the day, if you're reduced your county population, in theory, that saves money on food and cleaning supplies, and clothing and stuff like that.
But also to that, I mean, I hope nobody has this idea that everybody's gonna qualify for this program, because the jail is,
They're not?
the jail is there for a reason, so.
Right.
We're supportive of doing
No,
this
and-
program, but sometimes people also just.
Well, and that's the other thing is I would put in there also administrative costs, because, I mean, you can't just, I would have to develop policies or have somebody
Right.
develop policies for all of this. So you have to incorporate that in. as
Oh, yeah,
well.
that's what I'm saying. That's why I don't think we can.
All
do
of
it.
this data sharing.
Yeah.
You gotta have policies, you have to have all of that stuff done.
Well, and if we looked at the jail roster, which I frequently do.
I do too.
I figured you might. I figured you might,
Yeah.
but I can't really identify or get a handle on who would qualify for pretrial services if there were pretrial services. If it would like reduce the,
There would be a few. that would
Pre-trial.
qualify.
by,
The judges have been really good with the jail already. They do a lot of security where they review
right?
and do those releases. But a lot of, I think the judges would feel more comfortable in doing some of these other releases if there was
Pretrial.
that pretrial service,
Supervision.
because like Torgerson said in the last meeting, you could, depending on what level they are, level 1, where I'm just calling them once a month, to level 5, I have to show up to their house every day. I know the judges would be way more comfortable in doing
Well,
that.
and the community would too.
On that point, there is going to be a push this year to the legislature to remove unsecured bonds. Just a heads up, that was brought up from Swap Black, that's going to be one of the pushes. So
Hopefully they
just
take my idea I had when they introduced the unsecured bonds. So because I told Judge Torgerson, next time they change it, which they will, it sounds like that's happening. I told them what we should do is a monopoly game. And they just have to roll the dice to see if they can get out of jail.
get doubles.
They accumulate the money, that's how much the bill is, but if they pass go, they get out of jail. So they didn't like
Have to
that.
leave.
All right, so Andy and Steven, do you guys, with the edits discussed today in this meeting,
It's a good idea.
is it your assumption that our report at this point is good to go for submission to UAC at least?
Yeah, it looks like you fulfilled the statute. You've got a fully fleshed out strategic plan. You've got your community resources listed out. So whenever you guys want to make your revisions and feel comfortable, vote on it and send it in. And then as far as turning it in, there are two options, right? UAC can turn it into the CCJJ. We're going to do that for a couple of the coordinating councils around the state. But if you want to turn it in yourself, that's totally an option as well.
Great.
And we don't need dollar amounts or anything at this, on this version.
Market value is what she said, right?
Consumer enterprise.
All right.
if you want to put dollar amounts, Utah County is putting dollars because they want the state to know how much they're looking at for creating a pretrial services program. They kind of want to shock the state with their number, so they're putting a number in there. But then 6 county area is not putting a number, and they're going by consumer price index. So it really varies.
It's gonna be expensive in Moab.
Could you do it in the alternative, like no less than this?
You could, but I just think that the state should find out how much this is.
You get a
actually gonna
general
cost.
idea of what the cost would be,
I
but
mean, yeah, it's just gonna have to be
you would have to try and
figuring
figure
out
out inflation.
how
Yeah.
much of like what.
Right. But what it's gonna cost up in the Wasatch Front.
Would they want us to break it down to a one-time ask and a recurring ask?
Yeah,
And I think initially we can just, I mean, my thought was initially break it down into more of like, this is not going to be above this amount, it's going to be well above this amount. Cause I mean, there's no way for us to know, cause I mean, I haven't done the research and I don't know that we could come up with specific dollar amounts for all of these things in 2 weeks. I mean, I could try.
We can reach
Well, and
out
this-
to you, some of those contacts for,
Yeah.
you know, the other guys and field acquisition, their findings.
And
or
this,
estimates.
sorry, this funding will be one-time funding. It won't be ongoing. And so each November, there will be a strategic plan. You either resubmit your previous year if not a whole lot has changed, or if you want to completely redo your strategic plan next year. Maybe you've had some success and you want to go in another direction with it. You can absolutely rewrite your strategic plan next year. These are a year-to-year basis.
So Jameson, is there a way to get a provisional, like a temporary position to try and implement that before we get state funding?
Yeah.
So maybe it
Oh.
could be sooner rather than later.
to get a temporary position approved.
Maybe, I mean, I would say, you know. yeah,
Well, and
yeah,
just-
that's commission.
Yeah, and see how it works.
Technically, yes, you could, it's just. depends on-
Is it, yeah, is that,
I'm asking the wrong guy. So is it possible?
Go see what else the ask is like this year. I mean, obviously, as we all know, like the positions are like the expensive part.
well, and it's weird because the budget is for next year is essentially done. So it's a strange sort of situation to be in November, to be trying to create a new position and.
I think it's better right now to just get an idea of the cost
Right.
and what it would be. I mean, if you guys want to shoot for. a
Do you want me to
Trying
move up
do a
this
new
June date?
position For House Bill 61. the
Right,
state's
because
forcing
we're
us
trying to already
do.
do some other positions right now, so I think if we got a general cost and kind of went from there, because it wouldn't be just a position, you would have to also try and get the money for the ankle monitors.
Right,
the
no,
service
exactly,
tests,
that's
and all that other stuff, and then the administrative costs, and then it's also add more work, because I'd probably put it under the tracking side, the individual that already does the program managing for 24/7, which is also increased work on her as well, and so on. So there'd be a lot to figure out and just starting out, so.
We can give some numbers.
Oh, absolutely.
And if it's a one-time thing, I think focusing on some of that, the hard equipment, and it would be huge. A
Yeah.
good place to start.
Will Scram will give you a break? If you increase the.
I don't know, they like Amy, so. I'll have her call.
You're smart.
You haven't come to the budget advisory board yet, have you?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, was that?
Their eyes were this big when they said.
We'll just, if there's any added cost, we'll add it to mine. Mine's, there you go, so.
So then you don't need a motion to forward this to you, right?
Well, I think we should probably. I don't wanna say that. I would motion, I would do it this, I would motion to, after it's approved in via email, then we can forward it to US, so we don't have to have another meeting.
So. We can't like we can't approve something over the email,
doesn't
so I would say we could approve the edits discussed and authorize you to forward the UAC. Did that capture it?
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
So wait, in addition to that though, do we need to have another meeting before the final submission? Or do we want UAC to?
I think we can approve based off this discussion.
So,
And then I'll just send it around to make sure that it's, the discussion, that everything that I've edited is encapsulated by the discussion or has been, whatever. We've encapsulated the discussion in the edits and then I can forward it.
Okay.
And I think
But
that we can make that motion.
You're gonna forward it to UAC,
Mhm.
and then do we want UAC to turn into the state, or do we want us, okay, I think that there might be some. Especially if we have similarities in requests, that if we submit through UAC, that they might kind of bundle us together with some other ones.
Mhm.
And we might not see how much of a loan sheet. So, I don't think we need another meeting
Friday.
before submitting, unless anyone feels differently.
No, I don't think so. Does anyone feel different? And then when would the next meeting be, just so I can have it, like the normal? For the-
Based on the
is it in
bylaws?
January?
It's either January or March. I can't remember on the bylaws.
It'd almost be easier just to like.
Look for an email.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
The stuff, and then we just.
Do we need to vote on that motion?
Does somebody want to make that motion?
The-
Can I make motions?
I'll make mine.
All right,
I'll second.
great. We have a motion on the table to approve the bylaws with the edits we made and submitted. The strategic plan, the edits discussed today. And authorize, trying to come up with a date. Chrissy, to submit to UAC with UAC submitting to the state, our final submittal to the state. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. And then I guess Andy or Steve, if you guys have any feedback for us after receiving that, if we need to call a special meeting at that point, we can cross that bridge when we come to it. So if it looks like it needs a little further editing, let us know, please.
Absolutely, will do.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. So unless there's anything else, I would adjourn this meeting at